We are the most governed country in the world now. We've got more government control than any other country in the whole world. Second worst pension in the world, the most unaffordable nation in the English-speaking world for 15 years in a row.
Today we're going to be talking about one topic only, and it's about how Kevin Doodney is going to solve the housing crisis in Australia.
So we created the first, what I called a good Catholic home, which was 5 bedrooms. But in each bedroom it had its own lounge, dining, kitchen, bathroom, its own balcony, its own everything.
Besides just buying a block of land and putting a rooming house, like bigger picture stuff, how do we, over the next 100 years, get something that's actually going to work?
I guess it depends who you're talking to. For instance,
In one sentence, what would you describe as the biggest reason that we're in a housing crisis right now in Australia?
the development industry decided to collectively write the same covenant which said you can build anything you like as long as it's a 4-bedroom home, and therefore it's illegal to build anything less than that. And when you start building nothing but Mercedes-Benzes and giving people nothing but Corolla incomes, you've got a problem.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Unemployable podcast. Today we're going to be talking about one topic only, and it's about how Kevin Doodney is going to solve the housing crisis in Australia. For those of you guys that don't know who Kevin Doodney is, he's been in the real estate industry for over 40 years, and he's an Australian housing futurist. He is an expert in rooming housing. He sold over $2 billion of real estate in his time. Not only that, he's done over 1,000 rooms in over 200 homes. This is what he's been doing for the last 10 years, and he's very passionate about solving this problem, which is a problem for many, many Australians in this country. And if we don't do something about it very, very soon, most people will never own a house in this country ever again. Kevin, thank you so much for being here.
Guys, it's just such a pleasure to be here. It's the mistakes I made the last time I was here. I just thought it was a conversation. Before we can look around, 5 million people are watching it, and you go, "What happened there?"
For those of you guys that don't know, Kevin Doodney was on our podcast maybe about 6 months ago, or so.
Would take a couple months. Yeah.
Carson and Shannon, who run Unemployable Property with us at Unemployable, have been friends with Kevin for quite some time and thought it would be good to get Kevin coming on talking about what he's been doing in the rooming housing sector. Next thing you know, he went viral. News.com articles, and he actually had to go to a PR retreat by his business partners to actually know what he can and can't say on camera. So today, I don't know how we're going to go. I don't know how restricted he is. I don't know if he's got a little buzzer or something that he's got in his pocket every time he says something incorrectly. They've got him on speed dial. But guys, today is a very, very serious topic, right? We talk about this from time to time on podcasts. I talk about this probably on a weekly basis with friends and acquaintances, and it's about how we can solve the housing crisis in Australia. We've got Shannon and Carson, right, that are doing multi-million-dollar deals, trying to solve it by providing land. They are mainly land developers. And we've got someone like Kevin that is doing very unconventional things in the building industry that is very different than the old kind of 4-bed, 2-bathroom home that majority of us really don't need. So Kevin, in one sentence, what would you describe as the biggest reason that we're in a housing crisis right now in Australia?
In a sentence, the development industry decided to collectively write the same covenant which said you can build anything you like as long as it's a 4-bedroom home, and therefore it's illegal to build anything less than that. And when you start building nothing but Mercedes-Benzes and giving people nothing but Corolla incomes, you've got a problem.
So in your opinion, from that comment, what you're saying is what we've been building is your traditional 4-bed, 2-bath home across the country, from Sydney to Melbourne to WA to Brisbane to the Gold Coast. And now those 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom homes are becoming unaffordable. Not just unaffordable, but unattainable, really. Like not even within reach of a person on an average income. So what you're saying is we're building the wrong product for what the people can afford.
We're building the wrong product because when we built that in, say, 25 years ago, the block of land was $60,000. So you put a house on there for another 60,000 or 120, and so it's affordable. But when you get the same block of land that's now $700,000 and you build a 4-bedroom home on it, that is undercapitalisation. And so the problem is we've created in Australia a memory of architecture, and anything that's not that, nobody wants, because that's their memory. And so fundamentally, every block of land now is undercapitalised by putting a 4-bedroom home on it. It's the wrong thing to put on that most expensive piece of land.
But isn't the dream to have a house that is too big for you and have the rooms that you don't use in the second living area, in the alfresco, in the full, all the en suites and the pool, and that's the Australian dream, is it not?
It was the great Australian dream. It was called McMansions back in the 80s, where you wanted a tennis court and your own putt-putt and your own, pool, and sure. And you'd build something where we created what we call dinosaur rooms, such as a formal lounge, which no one sat in, or a formal dining. These places, when you start looking at people and connecting them with little devices, you realise how little time they spend in them. That's why we created back in 2009 the first Smarter, Smaller Home, to show what options were available. But even today, if I built the Smarter, Smaller Home on a block of land today, I have undercapitalised that block by the power of 10. So even a solution that was as late as 2009, my very first solution, doesn't work today. It is a constant game of adapting and changing to suit what works and what doesn't based on the cost of the land.
How did you get involved in what you're doing now? So you obviously sold, over 20,000 properties, $2 billion worth of real estate. You've been around a long time, and you weren't doing the smarter, small homes, right?
No.
Rooming houses.
No.
So take us back to a little bit of history going. I was one of the top sales agents, if not the top sales agent for LJ Hooker from memory in the country, selling development sites, selling house and land packages. You were the gun at selling the 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom house,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Which today you're saying we shouldn't be building.
I've sold 20,000 of those.
Correct. So where was the turning point when you're going, I'm killing it, I'm making commissions, right? I'm training people, I'm making all this money, to then going, we actually have a massive problem in this country that people aren't aware of and that I am going to solve. Where was that turning point?
Out of 6,600 real estate agents at the time, I became number one as a salesman. And I realized I'd created my own fig jam. You just get so good, just ask me. And you give up your soul when you do things like that. You become a machine where you just do it for the money, and you just buy a bigger car. The latest Mercs on pre-order. You turn left instead of right on the plane. You just get a bigger house. I had a 5-level home architect designed. We had to warn the grid that we were coming online because we had, the kids at home. It was either hot or cold depending on the air conditioner, with only 2 days where it was off. Stuff like that. And you start looking at your life and you think, is this it? If you really want to stay young and energetic, do something bigger than that. Just becoming the number one guy, you're a loser at the end of the day, because you're not really doing anything. You're just acquiring. And you wake up one day and you go, there's got to be something better than this. And having worked for developers for 40 years is in itself soul destroying. Because these guys have to answer to a publicly listed company, and it's all about sales, and it's about holding back stock. So, they'd say, no, we don't want to sell more than 100 blocks a year, Kevin. I know you can sell 300. If you do, you're fired. And next day we want another 30 because we're 30 short. It's a game of just moving pieces on the chessboard. So one day you just wake up and knock the chessboard over and say, let's do something different. It's just what you do, or you don't. But I did back in 2009. I then started resigning from developers. By 2013, I'd resigned my post on every developer. And I'm talking Lend-Lease, Multiplex, Stockland, all of them. I've been their go-to guy, their butt boy, whatever you want to call it, for a long, long time. I still do subdivisions for certain clients because I like them. I've just finished one in Canungra, and I'm taking on another 42-lotter personally. Why do I do that? Because, you get to meet the customers on site. And if you don't stay active that way, you just get old because you're just not staying fresh. So I still do that in a limited sense, because it's kind of nice to keep your hand in.
Most people, when they're investing in real estate, are buying today and holding for 10 years, hoping that the value of your property is going to go up. Other people are buying negatively geared properties for tax purposes. Let me tell you, what Kevin Doodney and the High Yield Property Club are teaching people is how to invest in rooming houses. They're building hundreds of rooming houses every year. What's a rooming house? It's a house with 5 separate rooms, with their own kitchenettes, with their own bathrooms, and 5 different people live in these houses. If you want to know more about this type of real estate and this type of investment structure, click on the link above the comments or go to www.unemployable.com.au/high yield property club, and Kevin and one of his team will get in contact with you guys to discuss this type of investment. But taking you back there and going, all right, it's now 2013, right? You made all this money, you've had the McMansion, you've done it all, you've flown business class, traveled the world, and now you're going, I want to solve a problem. Where did you see that? When did you see that problem? And what is the problem, in your opinion?
It's a changing one. So if it was 2009, the answer was the covenant said you had to build a 180 square metre home. We created a product which was 120 square metres. We proved to the market that that 120 square metre home was half the price to build. 10% of every house in Australia today, still today, ends up in the bin. That's the wastage we have with those bins. We created a home that was designed not to have wastage, so nothing ended up in the bin. It was designed with a flat roof like an esky, so it was warm in winter and cool in summer. It was a totally different approach to housing. It rented for exactly the same amount of money as a 4-bedroom home that was twice the size. And we realised then the law of diminishing returns says that just because it's smaller doesn't mean to say it doesn't get the same or better income. So all of a sudden we found a marriage between the investor getting a better return that created affordable solutions. So we knew it had to be a marriage between return on invested money and a smarter, smaller solution that supported a more affordable outcome. That was the turning point then.
It's you could gloss over that pretty quickly, but it's all well and good to have, tiny homes and all these things, but if you don't actually have the incentive for someone to do it, because the government's not going to do it, because they probably would have had a crack at it by now. They're trying to a degree, but like, who's going to solve the problem? So if there's not an incentive for an investor to jump in and do it, or unless mum, dad start building houses with, granny flats and bits and pieces off to the side, people just won't physically do it. They'll do something where they can get a better return. So it's a hard marriage, whether we like it or not. There's still that element to it that it's actually got to stack up to a degree. Otherwise, who's going to do it? And so what's your thoughts on that? Could the government just go out and do you ever see a world where they do, or is it just going to be investor driven?
I think it's going to be investor driven, clearly. The reason I say that is a few years ago, the superannuation funds in Australia gave Donald Trump at that time, back in his first term of presidency, which was around that 2000 and whatever it was that he got in, they gave him $5 billion of Australian money from our superannuation fund to support affordable housing in America. And the reason they gave $5 billion of our money to America was American president offered them a guaranteed return better than you'd get in Australia. So we can't solve the problem through superannuation funds or through government, because they can make more money giving it to someone overseas to solve the problem with a better return. Money is about money, and whether you're a government or whether you're a council or whether you're a state government, all of them are crying poor. They have to, and yet they're their biggest employer in Australia is the government. So the biggest problem is government employees can't get housing. It's literally the number one problem is government can't house their own people.
What are you actually doing? So what does Future Housing Task Force actually do? You went from the 4-bed, 2 baths, then you came to a realization, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm solving a bigger problem, which is the housing crisis that we have in this country. Now, I've been here since 2007, and I don't remember kind of there being a housing crisis. I did until probably, just prior or to COVID, from what I can remember. I've when I first bought a property, I paid $480,000 for my first property, and it was a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, brick and tile home that we renovated, but I didn't feel like that was unaffordable at the time or was out of reach. Like I was earning half decent money, but I wasn't like, you know, smashing it out of the park and owning all my own businesses and, you know, to kind of where, you know, at a level where we are today. But you're saying that 2009, 2013, there was a problem. How was there a problem? Like, what was a problem then versus what it is now? Because I feel like the housing crisis commentary has been a lot over the last 5-6 years since kind of COVID and obviously all this inflation. Was it really as bad back then?
I don't think anything's good or bad back then or now as much as it's different then. If you go back to developments when I was working with the Nev Pasks and the Stocklands back in, say, back when maybe Methuselah was my uncle or something like that, going back into, say, the 80s, it would take us 9 months from the time we acquired a block of land to the time we had it approved, roughly the same time as it takes to breed a kid. Today, looking at that analogy of having a baby, 9 months later you've got a subdivision with titles. Today you'd have to put that same child all the way through to grade 10 years or 15 years before you'd get a title. So it takes 10 to 15 years now to get a subdivision approved, a major one. So Caboolture West is in year 18. Rochdale took 15 years for Nev Pask. And these are going back 10 years, 15 years ago. It still was taking 10 to 15 years.
In Bob Ells, he's just sold out to Stocklands. That took him, 20 years to get King's Forest over?
Yeah, we got called in on that one when it was called, we named it Cobbokai Lakes when we were first called in to do the master plan with him on that. I wrote the original submission on Cobbokai Lakes, which is more land in New South Wales and Queensland, but it starts here. Now I think it's King's Forest or something. Yeah, Stockland bought that, paid a lot of money for that one. And sure, that was actually 28 years, that one. So, yeah, go Gold Coast.
Skyridge is the same. That was a very long-winded DA.
A decade. Yeah, no, a long time. So basically, we are the most governed country in the world now. We've got more government control than any other country in the whole world. So we've got that number one. Second worst pension in the world. The most unaffordable nation in the English-speaking world for 15 years in a row. Go Aussies.
We tick a lot of boxes.
We're good.
Nice beaches, though.
Yeah.
And this is where you come in going, people aren't going to be able to afford their own homes.
Well, again, there's 13,000 blocks, give or take. There might be 15,000 blocks titled now. They're going to release a new concept in a couple of weeks where the government says we'll give you an underwriting 20% deposit, 5% deposit will buy it. The banks all of a sudden say, you beauty. London Times has just said that's about 69,000 people that would be able to get that loan. Yet we've still only got 15,000 blocks. So even if you could buy a block of land, you've then got to wait 12.7 months to build it. You've still got to pay your rent at $800 a week, and you're a first-home buyer, and it's $1 million. Gee, wow! I think that's a couple of impediments to making it work.
So, is a real problem here that local councils and approvals are just taking too long?
It's really about sitting down with the people that may be involved in the problem and showing them how they could fix it. And it's not that hard, because you see, the federal government says, I will deliver, if I get elected, 1.2 million houses in the next couple of years that solves the problem. But the federal government doesn't build a house. They can't build a house. That's not their job. Their job is to declare a war on someone or create defence or health or bigger picture stuff. So it's the state government in every state in Australia is responsible for housing. So they give them some money and say, now here's the money, make it happen. But the state government goes, oh, well, we haven't got any land. And so we're really relying on Stockland or others to create the land. And they're not giving us the land, and we're not in control of it. So that state governments don't actually produce anything as such. So then they put it on council and say, you're now responsible as a council for your growth management strategy. You have to tell me as a state government how you are going to create your part of 527 councils and shires across the country as to how you're going to handle the growth management strategies. When you do that for me, I'll give you some money towards that. But you'll have to be more responsible, so you're going to have to create infrastructure charges and charge more rates or whatever you have to do to not go broke. So all of a sudden we've got these 3 layers of government for 27 million people that was originally designed for probably more like 200 million people. So it's a very old Westminster system that is just not geared for the population of Australia.
Here's what nobody tells you. There are a lot more average mortgage brokers than good ones. And once you find a good one, everything changes. When I found Loan Centric, they changed everything for me. They've done all my mortgages, car finance, plant and equipment for all of our businesses and our property portfolio. And now they're also working with a lot of the unemployable community. If you're looking for a new mortgage broker or just want to have a chat to see how they can help you, click on the link in the description. They're happy to sit down with you for a 15-minute consult and see how they can help you. Now let's get back to the episode. So if they're not releasing enough land, right, because the efficiency, productivity of releasing one 400 square meter block of land or 500 square meter block of land, and you build a 4-bed, 2-bath house on it as an example, and you have, say, one person or a couple that live there, right? Whereas what you're doing is you're taking that same 400 or 500 square meter block of land and you're allowing upwards of 4 and 5 people to live in that one property. Is that correct?
You've got two choices. You either have to outsmart the officials you're playing with, or you have to play within the rules. An example of that might be the way the National Code describes a house is deemed to be a house once it has a laundry. So as long as that house has a laundry, that's deemed to be a dwelling. If you build a granny house because that's got a laundry, that's an ancillary dwelling. But if I built that granny flat and I didn't have a laundry in there, that's no longer an ancillary dwelling. That's just an extension of the existing home. So in theory, I could go out tomorrow and build 10 houses on one block as long as 9 of those pods didn't have a laundry and had a common laundry. That's how weird it gets if you want to play a game of outsmarting them. But you can only play that card for about 10 minutes before people start rewriting the town plan to say you can't do that anymore. So you've got to you've got to learn to dance with all the players. And what I'm saying is, to solve affordable housing, let's create an example. And this is where it gets dangerous. When you come up with a new idea, and the Future Housing Task Force, which is the sister company to the High Yield Property Club, we build things with either no need for permission, such as a house without a laundry. We're doing that right now, and other things. And we can do that as a test run, if you like. So let's go to government. Let's say to the federal government, you've got the money deployed to state, you've got the job to go to council. What if we created the Great Australian Housing Challenge, where we said if the mayors ruled the world, and there's 527 of those across Australia, what does your local neighbourhood have as a problem? So if we go to, say, Mount Isa, we can't solve their housing problem because in July this year, 8 weeks ago, they just lost 500 jobs because the mine shut down, because Sweden decided that's no longer a go as Glencore, so shut that down. The whole town's built around the mine. So 500 houses are now vacant because one job equals one house. So that council problem is, how do we get more people that want to move to Mount Isa and create jobs that may be not required for them to have to turn up at work, but have a skill set that allows them to live in an affordable location, bring up their family in a safe environment, and create something in that council that works for them. So it's not always housing, because one job equals one house. If there's no jobs, no housing. It's really quite simple. So basically, you bring in 1 million people, then if that's 1 million jobs, you need 1 million homes. So Australia is officially now classified by the World Bank as a third world country, because when your growth management strategy goes past 2.5%, you are then considered a third world country, which means your infrastructure can no longer keep up with your growth. So as the Gold Coast gets 880 new cars every week coming into the general area of southeast Queensland, with one road to it and one road from it, it is a problem.
So it's interesting because we had a demographer on a couple of weeks ago, and he said one of the number one things for the Gold Coast that can make or break the Gold Coast is infrastructure.
Yep. Third world country.
Right. And then a week later, the article comes out going, state government is not funding the tram from Burleigh to the airport. And they've done all this work over the last 10 years or whatever it's been, taking it from South Fork. And you just shake your head, right? Because it's the same thing. The 880 cars don't stop coming.
No.
And in my opinion, they won't stop coming.
No. Why would they? It's a nice place to live.
Correct. And that's going to create more and more issues for this area as an example. But that's happening all over That's happening all over the country in multiple ways, right? Like it's all good saying, yeah, let's just go build this development out, an hour away west, but you need infrastructure there. You know what I mean?
Can't do it. Once you're a third world country, your infrastructure doesn't keep up with it. So you could build a brand new hospital in the Gold Coast, but you can't put any nurses there because they can't have housing, and you can't get them to that location, so they'll get a job somewhere else. So there's your problem, and that's where we are today in Australia. Because you see, we're building Australia. We're seen as the biggest country in the world in terms of our size, but we're only building in Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Perth, and less in Adelaide, certainly less in Tasmania. So really there's only 3 big engine rooms, and that would be Melbourne, Sydney, and Brisbane. But if you look at us as cattle, we're running 440 people per square kilometre in Sydney and Melbourne, but only 160 in Brisbane, which means we can't support our infrastructure even if we had it, which means you get to give away 50-cent tickets just to get people on them, and they'll still drive their car because they can. And so fundamentally, we are a third world country. We can't produce the infrastructure for the sheer numbers that we have, and that's a problem. And until we look at that on a... Let me go to my mate Michael Matuzik. He sees the world from a worm's view and a bird's eye view. A bird's eye view might be more global, whereas the worm view is I'm the person who's got a problem in that suburb, and this is my problem. That's the worm view. And so you've got 2 views of everything. So if you look at the worm view of the Gold Coast, it's too expensive to buy land there. It's too expensive to build there. Even if you could get an approval for a high-rise unit at $12,500 a metre house and land, you're not going to pay $1.25 million for a 100 square metre unit. It just doesn't work. And so fundamentally, it's overgoverned. If someone steps on a stepladder, you've got to have a permanent guy watching the guy on the stepladder because that's the new rules under the various governing bodies, such as unions. So it's a whole new problem.
So what are some out of the box solutions potentially? Like let's say you've been hauled into the Albanese's pulled you in and said, all right, you're the man. What are you doing like over the next kind of, are there any quick fixes, and are there any, like, you got 10 years to put us on the right track? What are the things you're doing? Is it simply just we've got like we were saying before, we got one of the biggest land everywhere. Is it just rezoning swaths of land, and then they'll argue, well, we need the infrastructure there, or what? Or is there out of the box ways of having communities off sewer, for example? I mean, we're building acreage stuff off sewer. We've even done 700 square meters on its own septic. It can be done. Whether council like that, I'm not sure. But so, what are some of these solutions that that besides just buying a block of land and putting a rooming house, like bigger picture stuff? How do we over the next 100 years, get something that's actually going to work?
I guess it depends who you're talking to. For instance, case in point, June 1999, the state government called me into a meeting and said, Kevin, we have a problem. I said, really? Fancy that. What's your problem? They said, well, we own a suburb called Inala in Brisbane. We've always owned it because when the soldiers came back from the war, we created a new act called the Housing Commission Act, which every state in Australia did, and that guaranteed the soldiers a home to come back to. And so we created Housing Commission homes. That's how it happened. They haven't really made any changes to the Housing Commission Act of 1946, and they've just kept collecting houses. I don't know where the government stores these toilets that they replaced them with, and they're still their original ones from 1946. They've got a big shed somewhere. But basically, they just keep these houses going. Inala was a problem because Scandinavian timber meant that the white ants had got into some. 20% of the whole suburb was unlivable, meaning that the homes were no longer capable of being lived in. So I got called in to look at the problem. Basically, I had to put the I back in Nala because they used to say I live in Nala and Inala. And so that was the first thing, rebrand it, give it a hope. And so we said to the government, let's do something unusual where the private sector gets involved in this. So we said, you've got 3 types of problems here. You've got a house that we can renovate, and the original size of that home is 85 square metres. So let's do a pilot study program. So we took one house and created an 85 square metre home and renovated it. We didn't extend it. We just made it what it was, but really made it nice again. The second one we tore down because it was white ant, and so we built a brand new brick home on there. Guess what? 4-bedroom. too far, that sort of thing, 2-car lockup. And the third one, we extended. And we extended it because most of the homes in Inala were concrete. So concrete's funny. The more weight you put on it, the more it likes it. So we turned them into 2-story homes. So there's 3 brand new products in Inala. Renovated, existing size, extended, and double-story. So we created 3 different products. Affordable, not so affordable, really not affordable. And it took off. And we did 670 homes for the government. Not one tenant was kicked out because those homes were unlivable. And then the government had to stop it because someone said the Housing Commission's selling off their stock and they shouldn't be doing that. When in actual fact, they weren't selling off their stock. We were renewing the stock and creating housing for people in that suburb. And more importantly, creating a balanced suburb where instead of 100% of it being Housing Commission, it became more like 60%, 50%. So it was a balanced common unity, one community. And so it continued to grow. That's what we did then. Today, what I would do is I would make every council in charge of saying to the Future Housing Task Force, Kevin, I want to talk to you about what we want to do in Mount Isa or what we're doing in Billawheeler or Rockhampton or Gladstone. And I'm going to write our strategy for what our people want in that suburb, that council electorate. And we're going to do a pilot study program in every council in Australia that is then supported by state government and federal government as a one-off. So the council gets to demonstrate one thing that they need in their community. It might be women in distress over 55. It might be a caravan park solution. It might be an off-grid solution. It might be how we create more jobs. It might be whatever it is that that particular electorate has a need for. And then we build all of those at the same time with those councils and create the biggest open for inspection this country's ever seen for the Australian people to look at all of those things and demonstrate it through some form of media, where we're showing how it started, what the project was. But to do that, we need to create a new thing called the Temporary Planning Instrument that every council in Australia has the right to do. A temporary planning instrument means for one only time, you're allowed to do whatever you want, and the town planners get to have a holiday, the engineers get to have a holiday, and the council gets to have a holiday, and the government gets to have a holiday, and we just build one. And if they like it, we cut the ribbon. If they don't, they say, let's not do that again. And so basically, if we can get all the layers of government moving, and they're still spending the money anyway, but put it where the locals know what they want instead of having the state decide or the federal decide, then let the people decide. And the people of Billawheeler know what they want. The people of Rockhampton know what they want. The people of the Gold Coast know what they want. They want affordable housing. Let's do a pilot study program to show how it's done. In Phoenix, Arizona, on 17 acres, they're housing 1,000 people in units from 30 square metres to 50 square metres, and it's close to light rail. That's called cul-de-sac tempeh. That works brilliantly at the Gold Coast on 17 acres. At the moment, we're solving a problem in a place called Gympie, where they have a need for affordable housing. So we haven't got land there, so we're allowed to put a caravan on a flood zone, because when it floods, we can pull the caravan out. And so all of a sudden, we've been able to deploy 8 caravans and have them rented within one day because the need for affordable housing is so great. So all of a sudden, we can start using land that is not normally livable on by putting it on wheels. Different things, different places, different solutions. We don't have to create things that become, if you like, a future ghetto. That's not the point. It's about how you manage the growth. We are a third world country now nationwide because of our growth. If we don't accept that, we have a problem. The second issue is there's 5 billion people on this planet that are dealing with poverty or some form of no shelter, and we see them as the wrong people and losers. They're not. These are the most creative people on the planet because they're still eating, they're still living. They are the people who can teach us how to do it.
Very resilient, very resourceful.
You got it. The most resilient, resourceful people on the planet are those 5 billion people. We are not there in this planet until we start realizing we're all one and that we can solve this problem together. It's not me solving it. It's about how I get 527 councils at the same time to agree to just do one thing. And I say to them, look, that's being done on the other council. Come up with something else and we'll help them with what that could be.
How have you been going on that journey? Are they open to ideas? Do they sit down with you? Do they take the calls? Can you get your calls? Can you get through the gatekeepers?
No. And the reason for that is they gave us all watches, but they have the time. And what I mean by that is we all have watches and we can tell the time, but government don't have to rush. They can take 15 years to do a subdivision. There's no rush. So, I've had 2 goes at government in the last 7 days, state and local, and there's no rush. I've given my report. I've told them what can be done. I've told them how we can do it. We gave 7 councils heads up 6 years ago of a thing that we called tent cities, and we gave it a name called working homeless, where those people living in those tents had a job. And we gave them fair warning of that happening because we get that data from Anglicare and so many other people. You can see it a mile away. And we made it to their attention. Did they do anything? No. It's not their thing. Because you see, federal can't deal in housing. State can, but that's too big. Local can, but they've got no money. And so until we actually get all 3 of them to do that pilot study program, a one-off, with no restrictions, because you see, when you're working with council, state or federal, it has to be done by tender. Using a temporary planning instrument means they can do that with me in the private sector once and once only, and then if it works, go to tender. And whoever does the job better than me gets the job.
But
Might be me.
What happened, typically these governments will go pay one of these stat groups to go out there and they'll pay them $10 million to tell us what the problem is, and then we'll go resolve it. They spend all this money.
Accountants.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they turn around and say, we need more housing or whatever they come back and say, but
Sure.
nothing actually gets done.
Price Waterhouse.
That's right. So
Expensive report.
isn't that, will it just be more lip service though? Like, or are you saying because you've probably giving, so your point is to actually get the people to say what they want in that particular area, and just do that pilot study across the board, and then just say, and then you guide them from there, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm saying that the Gold Coast has 700,000 people. Do an online study of that. People can go online and say what would they like to see as a solution for their children's. And let's do one of those so that those 700,000 people who are interested can look at that project when it's finished and say, that's exactly what I don't want, or that's exactly what I do want. I want that in my backyard. Not I don't want that.
But do you think there'll be more people that will always vote at the end of the day? You got the politicians that want to get re-voted, get re-elected at the end of the day. So how do we get around someone that cares more about getting re-elected if 51% of the people don't want this thing in their backyard? Like, how do we, and it's actually, and you can see that that's actually the solution, but are they still going to do it? Or do you think that 51% of people will come to a consensus and each council will have their solution, so to speak?
I go back to my experience with Anala, and when we did those 3 homes, we then had to win the tender. And every year we had to win the tender for 7 years in a row, which meant anyone can beat us, and we had to stay well and truly ahead of the pack to continue to innovate and deliver. Governments only trust government. And so therefore, if the federal government works in partnership with the state government, in partnership with the local council, that works. We're then employed just as a private-public partnership to be involved in what could work and what doesn't work from our 50 years of experience. The problem with government is the guys that are elected aren't making the decisions. Government is the machine below that. Only you don't have to watch Yes Minister to understand that, or our own version of that in Australia with the various utopia shows that we've done. And fundamentally, the machine runs government. So what we need to do is get that machine to be in alignment with federal, state and local, and just do one only study in 1 year. So you put a time on it. So the watch is in government hands as well as ours. We're both telling the same amount of time, because us having the watches and them having the time doesn't work. We need to be on the same time frame. So everyone gets a watch. It goes around every 24 hours. This time it's all open on this date. So let's pick June 30, 2026. Every government has their open for inspection. Council. There it is. They've got a time frame. The locals get involved in that because they want to be involved in local. And so mayors rule the world in this instance. Just once, let the mayors rule the world, not state, not federal. But they're still working together. So I'm not upsetting the apple cart. And keep in mind that 12% of every job in Australia is a government employee anyway. And the biggest problem we've got is you can build a hospital in the Gold Coast tomorrow, but you can't get nurses there because you can't put them in a house. If you can't house them, you can't give them a job.
To go a bit deeper locally, what does that product look like? What do you think the answer is, and what sort of product should we be doing a TPI or TLPI on?
Okay, so a temporary, you're talking about a temporary planning instrument? Yeah. Pick a council. There's 527 of them.
Gold Coast,
Gold Coast.
Brisbane, either other.
Okay, so which one would you like? Gold Coast?
Go Gold Coast, because I know you can
Okay.
get 500.
Gold Coast is the hardest one. Gold Coast has said we've got enough land to last us till 2046. We know they've only got land till probably 31, because the land they've said they've got is flood zone, koala corridors, a whole bunch of stuff that just doesn't make it work. So Gold Coast is without doubt the toughest one of all. It's the first place which has got rich people, and that's it. You just like house in Burleigh is probably 4 million, something like that for a new one. So it's a totally different town. So how do you create housing for first home buyers and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. You'd probably go into a place like Wurrunggeri, which is zone rural. And then they'd say, well, we can't do sewage and water there because it's not ready for another 10 years. So you'd say, okay, we will build under the task force banner an estate that is 100% off grid. However, when the infrastructure comes through for water, we've created a single pipe that's big enough to go to a central facility within our off-grid system to then distribute that water to all the housing that's there. We've created a sewage system that's off-grid, that when you create your sewage there, our pipe's big enough to let that go into your sewage system. So make it planned that way. So when sewage was upgraded in London, the guy decided to build a sewage system 200% bigger than what they asked him to build. That still works today because he built something bigger. So think a little bit longer term about what you're creating. It's one thing to create off-grid subdivisions, but it's also wise to make it on-grid when it's possible to do so.
100%.
So then let's go to Wurrunggeri straight away, create an off-grid subdivision. 9 months later, we used to be able to do a subdivision in 9 months. Let's do it again and create that subdivision. What has it got a mixture of? Well, it's got a caravan park, so people can buy a $3,000 caravan, renovate that up to a nice caravan with their own toilet and shower. Future Housing Task Force has just done that, and we've already placed 10 vans in the last 7 days for people who needed affordable housing immediately. FEMA in America has got 100,000 vans sitting idle until the next problem. Australia doesn't have that. We just go to a basketball stadium and sit there until it's over. We don't have a solution. So we need to create a whole different level of things. Whether it be caravans renovated, that's a good start. Have that in there. Have cabins within that caravan park. Allow people then to create bungalows and other stuff in that sector. Create a first home buyer product, which starts at 50 square metres. Look at cul-de-sac tempeh and anyone can do that. If you're listening to this, go to cul-de-sac tempeh on Google. Arizona, simple. And they've created 1,000 units, roughly 50 square metres each, where people own that unit. They've put the toys on the roof, so it's a flat roof solution. They've created their own restaurants. They've created a car park where if you want to park your car there, it costs you a fortune, or you can just make a phone call and the car's there waiting for you, and you use it when you need it. Next to a light rail, everyone's happy. So all of a sudden, you've created walkable neighbourhoods. In Wurrunggeri, you still need cars, so figure out how to deal with that. But basically, 17 acres, 1,000 people.
So in the meantime, obviously these are all, ideal solutions, but you're not getting in the room, right? You're not talking to the people that you need to, or they're not listening, or not getting the airtime. So what are you doing in the meantime? Right? Obviously, you're still doing things, but you're obviously not building these master plan communities like the one that you just mentioned in Wurrunggeri. That sounds great, by the way. What are you actually doing?
Okay, so 2015, I decided that land was so expensive at the time that we were undercapitalizing it by building a 4-bedroom home. I noticed that 2 people were living in a 4-bedroom home anyway, and therefore it was underutilized. So we created the first, what I called a good Catholic home, which was 5 bedrooms. But in each bedroom, it had its own lounge, dining, kitchen, bathroom, its own balcony, its own everything. We ended up in court 6 times with that particular council because they said you can't have a kitchen because that triggers an infrastructure charge of $21,000 per room. That's $105,000 more you owe us, less the original credit that you had, around about $85,000. We then had to pull the bathroom sink out and put it where the kitchen was and then call that the bathroom sink. So then we overcame the court issue by simply moving the bathroom sink to the kitchen because by law you have to have a bathroom sink. It just doesn't say where. And then they said you can't have a fridge bigger than a bar fridge, and so we had to win that one. Then you can't put a PowerPoint in or a toaster. We had to win that one 6 different times all the way through. So when you're creating new product, resistance is always there. but you've got to come at it like a Borg from Star Trek. Resistance is futile. If you've got 45 years of training in what you can do, and the person you're dealing with has only been in that job dealing with housing for maybe 10 minutes or 3 years before they're re-elected, then it's up to you to have a duty of care to bring that information to them and say, look, we can continue to outsmart you, or we can play together. Now, that same council is without doubt the biggest hero, in my opinion, in Australia today, and that's Brisbane City Council, who allow me to do that without infrastructure charges. I mean, it was a fight to begin with, but once everyone starts understanding that we mean no harm, that it's a genuine product that has a genuine need, then all of a sudden the state government says, well, we'll give you a moratorium now, Kevin, where you can build them anywhere in Queensland for 2 years before we reset that. That's now up for renewal, and the new Liberal Party knows not much about that because they didn't do it. So now we have to educate them as to why the benefits are there. We may not win that argument. They could say, no, all bets are off. We don't know what we don't know. So it's like I mentioned in a previous podcast, the Vancouver Special, which was the solution for housing in Vancouver. What makes Canada different? We've got 4.1 million baby boomers here. They've got 8.2 million. So they've got double the numbers roughly to us. I'm assuming they've got a population of probably 50 million based on the number of boomers. So the Vancouver Special in the 60s was built in 3 weeks. You could have 2 families, one in the bottom, one in the top. First mortgage-free home where the guys from downstairs paid for the guys upstairs. You got to live a quality of life by sharing your dwelling. Literally, they created a legal duplex, but it was against the law. So what the guy did was he said, yeah, but we're building a basement because it's 18 inches under the ground. Therefore, it's not 2 dwellings. It's a basement and a house. So you have to start sometimes by outsmarting someone until you can get logic. So we start by probably not playing fair sometimes to get attention. That's all I can do is just do it.
So right now, the Future Housing Task Force and obviously High Yield Property Club have found a way to build these rooming houses, right? Knowing kind of the rules and regulations that you guys got to go by
In harmony.
and you're creating opportunities for first-time home buyers, for investors to enter the market. So instead of let's run through some numbers, and I'd love to, if you can pull up, Toby, if you can pull up with what one of these actually looks like for the people watching. So we'll pull one up, anyone watching on YouTube, that you can actually see what one of these 5-bedroom rooming houses looks like. How big is the kitchenette? How big is the bar area? How big is the toilet?
Yep.
Because I think it'll be great to visualize. I mean, we've seen this before. You've shown us off camera, but it'd be great for the viewers to have a look at these things. So how are you actually building these things at the moment?
The average build time of a house is 12.7 months. We're building them in 7 months because money is time. But that comment I made about the watch is pretty serious. The thing that kills every developer in Australia today is time. That's what always kills you. It's time. Time is money. And so speed of delivery is the most important thing. From the time we find a block of land in the middle suburbs of Brisbane, Zilmere, Deagon, Sandgate, on the other side, Tingalpa, through Darra on the other side to now we're moving into Moreton and Ipswich. From the time we find the block of land to the time we finish the house is less than a pregnant pause from acquisition to delivery to tenancy. Now, each tenant's paying $380 a week on average. That's snuck up to $400 a week. But keep in mind that the most attacked person in Australia today is the 21% of people that are single, because their power bill for a single person is the same as a family of 5 because it costs the same for the air conditioner and the fridge and all those things. So a single person is really attacked with things like power, water, and other charges. When we build a 5-bedroom home, we put 13.5 kilowatts of power on the house. And then the government suddenly in the last couple of weeks in Melbourne and Sydney is saying a sun tax, or we're not going to pay you any money for the power anymore. Didn't see that coming for a lot of people. And they're willing to give the power away for free to a Tesla that's going past the door rather than just do that. So now we have to quickly pivot, and now we're producing 20 kilowatts of power on the roof, which goes straight to our 40 kilowatts of storage battery, which means we then have to build a house with 3-phase power to future-proof it to allow for these things. We have to be ahead of the curve all the time. And so fundamentally, as long as we're producing our own power plants, we can give that first home buyer, or in this case the tenant, affordable housing, because we give them $27,500 worth of furniture that if they rented that, that would cost them probably $6,000 a year, just that alone. And then no power bills, no water bills. The internet is shared with all 5 of them, so we provide that at no cost. So 21% of Australians are single, and in America moving to 40%. People are just not getting married anymore. They're just starting to say, I think I'll go it alone. It's too expensive. Doesn't work. I don't want to go there, you know? So it's a whole new world.
I mean, even if it's temporary, you know, you might be that single person for 5 years until you do get married or find that person, but then there's going to be 10 other people behind you that are going to want your room to rent, right? So obviously is there still more demand than supply in that industry? So yeah, let's run through.
I could build 2,000 of these tomorrow and still not touch it. I mean, why is that? Well, our tenants are earning on average $1,300 a week. That's what they have to earn to legally be able to rent it, because when you're renting something at $400 a week, the Residential Tenancies Authority says you're not allowed to take beyond a certain level of their income, call it 33%, something like that. So therefore, our tenants are not students. They are government workers. They are teachers, nurses, doctors. They are firemen. They are construction workers. The average age is probably 35, female, male, 52% male, 48% roughly female. We're not dealing in women in distress over the age of 60. That's not our market. That's more different housing. That's more government subsidised stuff. We are literally housing a market of people who go to work for 10 hours a day, come home exhausted, what's to eat, probably Uber Eats. You know, that's their life. I'm not going to read a book. I'm just going to go on Netflix, and then I'm going to fall asleep. I'm going to wake. I'm going to go to work. That's it. And they do that for 12 months, and they fall in love, and they have to move out because you can only have one person living there. And so fundamentally, the cause of moving out is that they get into a relationship, and then they need to move into some other sort of housing. But in Australia today, investors have consistently only bought 4-bedroom homes, and they're not getting a return on that given what they're worth. When you look at a house today in the Gold Coast for $1 million is what it costs or owns or what it's worth. Doesn't matter if you paid $200,000 for it. You're getting $800 a week on $1 million investment. At 10%, you need $100,000 return on that, and you're getting $40,000. There's nothing like it. It doesn't work. It's negatively geared.
I know people.
So you'll buy Bitcoin.
Yeah. I know people that are doing this illegally.
Yeah,
right.
Slum landlords. Been
Yeah,
around for a while.
they're renting a house.
Yeah.
4-bedroom house, and then renting each room out and doing it illegally and doing it multiple times over and over again.
Yeah.
You know, so obviously it's been, I mean, it's not rocket science. This has been, you know, unless you've been living under a rock, this has been happening for a long time. The difference with what you're doing is, one, you're doing it legally and you're giving an opportunity to invest. All they're doing, that's like a side business kind of sublet with a sublet agreement. Here, you're giving an opportunity for an investor.
Yeah.
Right. Or first time home buyer, right? That goes, I'm a single person. I don't need a 4-bedroom house myself. I'll live in a room for a year or two while the other people pay my mortgage. And when I move out and fall in love, right, I'll just rent out my room as well. And now I'm getting, you know, $2,000 a month or you know, $2,200
A week.
a week, sorry. And Bob's your uncle, you know.
And fat is your aunt.
What are
Just thought I'd mention.
yeah. What are some of the, let's run through some of the numbers. So for people that haven't heard this before, that are going, I'm looking for my next investment, right? My mortgage broker, my financial advisor has just told me about this new development that's happening, these 4-bed, 2-beds in Yarrabilba in Ripley for $980, right? Double lockup garage.
Sure.
And I can get $800 a week rent, and I'm negatively gearing it because it's great for my tax, which is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Sure.
Run some numbers so when people are listening, and they're listening very, very, very clearly, that they can get a good understanding of what some of the returns that you can make on this style of investment.
I call it the magic number 8. And the reason I call it that is because if you've got $1 million deployed and you get an 8% return, that's $80,000 a year. So if you had cash of $1 million, you put that into a deal and think of it as cash, and that's $1 million deployed, and you're getting $80,000 a year, you know you could probably live on 80 grand a year if you had to. But when you deploy your funds and you're getting 2.9% return on that, that's only 20 grand a year, or 30 grand a year, or 4% at 40 grand a year. You can't live on that. So if you're deploying funds, it has to hit that magic number of 8. So when you look at our rooming house model, we have to find a block of land, build a house on it, which is roughly $2,800 a metre, same as it does to build any house, with 6 wet areas, 5 bedrooms, and a common area, because legally we have to still have that common kitchen. Doesn't get used, but we still have to have it by law, and a common lounge and a common dining. Doesn't get used. And so that's the model we have to play by under the Rooming House Accommodation Act. That produces roughly $400 per week per room times 5 is $2,000 a week, or $100,000 a year. We then build products in there such as timber floors, because they depreciate over a year or two, as against tiles, which take 25 years to depreciate. Our furniture is depreciated over 2 years. So if you're in a job, you're getting a massive, massive depreciation on this product, because you're writing off so much in the first couple of years. It's ridiculous and very profitable. And the government is happy to give you depreciation. So tick that box. The income, $100,000 a year on $1 million deployed, give or take. It's probably 1.1 now, but it is sneaking up to 8.5. So it balances out, because rents do go up. And so it's affordable. If you want to say it's affordable, the best way to look at that is the average tent site costs more in that same suburb than what our rooming house does. So a tent site these days is probably $70 a night in that same suburb. That's $420 a week for your tent site. It's powered, and you've got to walk to the toilet, wear your thongs. So basically, not real good. So we don't have a competition here. We are the bottom of the market. But our client is not the bottom of the market. That's the mistake people make. They are your dentists, your firemen, your nurses, your teachers. They now have affordable housing. So if I want to do that back on the Gold Coast, I wouldn't just do a rooming house. I would do something like cul-de-sac tempe, where you could create 10 acres of 500 people and do a more purpose-built. And within that, they'd have their mama's kitchen, which means on Monday night, it's meatballs or vegetarian. On Tuesday night, it's spaghetti or vegetarian. On Wednesday night, and then there's some gluten-free options.
Can we actually do that right now on the Gold Coast, or no? Is it a dream at the moment?
I'm going to go with up shit creek without a paddle, if that helps.
Yeah.
So basically, again, it comes down to we own the watches, they have the time.
Yeah.
Time kills it. If I said to these two guys as a developer, this is what we want to do, and it means you've got to give up 10 years to get that, as against the as of right to build a 4-bedroom home, which way are you going to go? You're going to flatten your site and say, I can't do a split-level home anymore, so I'll make something that Metricon can build on, because all the other builders have gone broke. It's about this cost-benefit. You can't take a developer and push them into a new idea until it's so solidly proved that that's safe to do.
Well, not only that, good luck trying to get finance on certain things like that. So a lot of people, when we're talking about the cost of construction and all these things, you can't physically get the loan if you don't have like a minimum 20% margin. So it doesn't even matter if we want to solve certain problems, unless you're just got a couple $100 million and you want to do that as a charity, which was great if people can do that. But if you physically want to do it, there's still the financial realities that we are bound by. But going back to your point with the rooming houses as well, I think it's a good scenario putting the developer hat back on. And what we say to a lot of our coaching clients is, yes, you can get a block of land and build a rooming, which is what you do, which is great. But also, if you want to take it to another level, do your 5-lot subdivision, sell 3 or 4, build 1 or 2 of these things. Whereas typically, if people want to build a portfolio at the same time, they'll just build that 4x2. And that's why we wanted to get you guys involved, get yourself involved with our guys and say, hey guys, when you want to start holding stuff and it's residential, at least consider this rooming house, because you're going to spend $1 million all in or whatever it is, spend the same or a little bit more and get this rooming house, and your yields double. So it ticks a lot of boxes.
It's the right capitalization, yeah.
I want to run through some numbers, right? So that people could get a good understanding of how they can make something like this work.
Okay.
So let's do one of your most recent deals in Brisbane on one of these, Deegan, Zilbeer, Acacia, wherever it may be. 5 rooms.
If I was a year ago, I'd sell a block of land in Boondall for 530. Today, I'd probably have to pay 680,000 for the block of land. That's how much it's gone up. So 680, call it 700, so I can add 550 to build the house. I'm at 1.2-ish to
Yep.
build it today. For 1.2-ish, I'm going to get a return of about $104,000 to $105,000 a year out of that gross, and I'm going to lose 25,000 off the top of that 100 for property management, rates, and other things that cost to create that. So I'm going to end up with 75% of that 100 grand, which
Yep.
then goes towards either a mortgage or cash flow.
Yeah.
Most of my clients are building rooming houses at the age of 45 on, because for them to transition to retirement, if they own 3 of these outright, they're getting an income of 300 grand a year net, less costs of running it. So that's enough for them to retire. Most of my clients building rooming houses just want a retirement option, and they see housing as the safest and best solution. They're not Bitcoin fans because they don't understand it,
Yep.
or they're scared that that could change overnight. It scares them.
Yeah.
So therefore they don't do that. They haven't got the education to understand it, so they're not going to do it. Confusion always equals no in everything we do in humanity. So when you come up with a new product that's confusing, equals no, especially if you're a government. So we have to do demonstration, which is why I go back to the mayors ruling the world, the government working together as all 3 layers, with someone like us helping to guide them as to what their problem is and how we solve it. Now, back on rooming houses, there's 2 ways you can buy real estate in Australia. Joint tenants, which means if I die, you and I are partners, you get it, or we do it because you and I aren't married, and maybe a couple of scotches first. We have to then deal with the fact that, sorry about that, we then have to deal with the fact that we're buying that as tenants in common, which means that if I die, I can sell that to somebody else.
Yep.
My family takes it. So as tenants in common go, I could take a rooming house tomorrow and take 5 kids, first-home buyers. Mum and dad could help them. They could own their own 30 square metre unit for 250 grand to 275 grand each, because that's the same figure for 1.2. Now that they own that as a tenant in common, they could then keep that, pay it off as quickly as they can, and rent that out for $400 a week to someone else, giving them an income to help them with their mortgage
Yes.
as they step up. So what we need to create in Australia is step housing. But we can't create step housing when for the last 50 years, the only step was a Mercedes-Benz.
Yeah, correct.
It was always a 4-bedroom home. Back in 1974, when we invented the ensuite, the female of the species wouldn't allow the man to go to that toilet for 2 years because they didn't want him using that one in the bedroom.
Yep.
So it takes a long time to create new architecture for people to get used to it.
So back to the numbers, right? I'm just working it out. So you've got 70, that 25,000. Does that include rates and water and
Everything.
internet and all that stuff? right?
Internet,
So you're
cleaning.
you're left with 79,000.
75,
Sorry, 75,000.
give or take.
Yep. Now, if somebody has a 20%, like how could they fund it? Can they fund this using a 20% down deposit, or what banks would they?
Banks won't touch it because it's a product they don't sell, they don't service. Here's the problem. We can come up with a solution, but the banks won't support it because they only support 4-bedroom homes, and that's what they support. That's what they know.
Yeah.
So you'd come up with a 3-bedroom home and they'll downgrade that by 70 grand, come up with a 2-bedroom home, it's 150 grand worth less for a lousy 20 square metres out of the house. And again, I'm undercapitalising if I build that on that block.
Yes.
So really, I shouldn't be building a 4-bedroom home today on a block of land. So let's go to Deegan. The client is a baby boomer retiring at the age of 58. So we built a rooming house for him over here, which gives him 100 grand a year. His PPR, principal place of residence, we built 160 square metres on the top floor, 100 square metres of house, 50 square metre deck, because the deck is not considered part of the dwelling. That's not gross floor area, it's external. And so he's got a really nice deck. He's got a 100 square metre home, and we built 4 units underneath. So he's getting an income of $80,000 a year from his principal home. He's now living in Deegan, close to the railway station, the coffee shop's across the road. He's living where he wants, and his home is giving him a personal income of $80,000 a year. So that's how you get boomers moving from their McMansions to something other than a townhouse, other than something like an apartment, which means literally living apart, into a place where they can share space with 4 other people. And if they get to a stage of age, we built a lift in there so that he could kick one person out of a unit downstairs and have the carer in there still looking after him as he ages in place. So it just works across the whole span of our lifespan.
That's a great product, that one.
Yeah,
We've
Resi
done a
rental.
walkthrough. I really love that property.
It's a winner.
Oh,
It's a chicken dinner
awesome.
all the way.
Yeah, definitely. What about insurance?
Yeah, that was it.
Is that another barrier for you? A lot of barriers when you're trying to change policy here.
Yeah. That's why developers don't do what they don't do, because they know that there's barriers. Our job is to break those barriers down. We had to convince the insurance company to issue 2 insurance policies, one for the principal place and one for the other. We had to break the build cost down for the Australian Taxation Office. So one was a PPR, non-taxable, and the other one was taxable. We then had to break down a whole bunch of other stuff. We had to put them all in neat little boxes. So when they come gunning for you, what do you mean that's a principal place of residence earning you $80,000 a year? No way, Jose. That's an investment. We're coming after you. So you just got to think of the future. And we did.
How have you seen anyone creatively fund these rather than just cash? Is there any funders out there?
Yeah. I mean, Columbus Capital, who own Granite and so many other names under different brands, have been our sole supporter of finance until 2 weeks ago, because NDIS changed the rules and we got sucked into co-housing, which is NDIS and other things. So they've now banned lending on our product. All of a sudden, our biggest lender is no longer our biggest lender. So we then have to pivot to another one. So it's a problem. It's lumpy and banks won't lend on it. Having said that, they will when you get to a certain point. Like I was the only builder in 2015, one builder. Now there's 22 doing rooming houses. I promise you in the next 2 years, the investment community will be saying, who's not building a rooming house? Get to that level where it's, who's not doing that?
And are they all paying cash then? Or are they refinancing? And because if somebody could find
80% of our investors,
find
80% of our investors are borrowing 80% of the money, or 60% of the money if it's second tier lending, because we're building a commercial building, class 1B commercial.
correct.
So we do not get insurance with QBCC. So here's a warning for the clients: do not build a rooming house with a builder unless you know he's going to not go broke. So the builders we work with are 45 years in the industry, and I've worked with them for that 45 years. I know his balance sheet. They tell me every quarter what they're earning. They don't go out and buy a jet ski. They don't go out and buy a McMansion.
Yeah.
They are geared to build.
But you have partners or strategic alliances with funders that can help people,
Yes.
because that's a big key, I think, to this.
Massive.
Because, I mean, at the end of the day, not everyone, but a lot of people are spruiking just negatively geared property, because nothing really is positively geared these days, unless you're Airbnb-ing it, or unless you're buying it in Mount Isa and you're getting overpaid for rent because the Swedish government is paying Glencore, and then all of a sudden they're gone and you've just overpaid for something that's empty for years to come. And I know that's happened in
Moranbah went from 1,600 a week to nothing.
$1.5 million people were buying shacks for that were getting. I own
Reselling at 200 grand.
I owned a property in Roma
Same.
back in the day, when they were building the gas line, and they had major floods there at the time. JJ Richards, I bought a house there for 450 grand. I was getting $1,500 a week rent for 2 years.
Yeah.
And then I started seeing the writing on the wall, and I sold and I got out. That same house today would be getting 550, 600
On a good day. On a good day.
If they're getting it. I sold it. I never looked back. I never searched Roma ever again on realestate.com. I was just like, it was a mortgage broker, mate of mine, that said, hey, here's an opportunity. I took the punt at the time, but it's definitely something I wouldn't recommend doing, because if you're held with that, that's a big mortgage that you're going to have to pay. And this is why I love these unconventional ways of investing and bringing people like you on, Kevin, because a lot of people won't know about this. And the thing is, you've done the work. Right? You've done the work around the rules, the regulations, whether you got to put a sink in the kitchen and call it this, or, a laundry in the back and call it that. You've done that work.
Yeah.
And you've been doing it over and over and over again, right?
Had the battle armor on for a while now.
Yeah. I mean, you've done over 1,000 rooms. There's not many people that can say, hey, I've done over 1,000 rooms, over 200 houses in this industry. And that's why we get people like you on and create relationships with you, because there's people out there right now that would be going, I've got 300 grand in the bank. I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. If I got in my car today, here we are at the Gold Coast, and I drove for half an hour, I'd be in New South Wales. As soon as I'm in New South Wales, I can build an 8-room rooming house. I can have 12 occupants as standard, as long as it's not past 300 square meters. Can't go past that size. That's the national code. Has to be a class 1B. That's the same across Australia. So in New South Wales, I can create 8 rooms, 12 occupants.
So it makes it even juicier.
Yes.
Does lending and insurance change once you're over the border?
Everything changes when you're over the border.
Will,
They're
will
Mexicans.
banks fund it down there?
Yeah. Banks are nationals. They're ecumenical. They don't see borders. And it is a Class 1B construction. So it's all about what equity are you willing to put in. So you might have to put in 30% or up to 40% in some instances. But the money you're deploying gets you a better cash flow anyway. So any developer who's smart would not have cash reserves. They'd have 20 rooming houses, earning them, 100 grand each, and using that as playing cards when they want to get equity.
Correct.
And every time we build a rooming house for 1.1 million, it's automatically sold on a 6% yield. So every resale of every rooming house sells on a 6% yield. So it has capital growth built in of 200 grand or more every time.
Correct.
So you talk about 80 grand, 200 grand lift.
Yeah. Just an equity on the resale. And this is what people need to realize. Not only is it the cash flow, but it's that built-in manufactured equity.
Yep.
Right. This is why we teach at Unemployable Property, and what the boys are doing an amazing job at, is teaching people how to manufacture equity. It's all good. You want to buy a property, sit on it, wait 10 years. Most likely in most areas, it'll go up in value within reason. Some areas will do a lot better than others. But you're not manufacturing anything, right? At least with this here, you're actually manufacturing growth.
Yeah.
You're not just buying something and hoping and waiting that it's going to go up in value over time.
Yeah.
Tell me about, have you done any in New South Wales yet with the 8 rooms?
Close. We've teamed up with a very powerful community housing provider who are looking at the biggest problem in New South Wales, which is the biggest failure of New South Wales, which is Lismore.
Yes.
High and dry. They really, you could screw up everything all at once. They did it there, everywhere. You guys are involved in that Lismore Council. You know it well. They are supportive of development. We're building one there in Gunnellabar. It's currently in planning. The council approved it within 21 days. Now we're stuck in state government planning, which is another 5 months in, 6 months in. But once we do one.
Yeah, sets precedent.
Yeah. So the place I would move to for those listening would be Port Macquarie next, then Coffs Harbour.
I'd be very interested in speaking with you off camera about those areas.
Well, we've done all our homework.
If you could get 8.
Well, that's what we're doing. That's like the Gunnellabar Bar. We've sat down with Kevin and said, look, we've got 71 lots there. Yeah, what can we do? And that's something that we're gonna explore and not just do your traditional 4x2s. There will be some of it that will go to that, but it's something that I just see as a massive need. Like it, and especially like Shannon said before, that one where you can live there as well.
Yeah.
Like for downsizing boomers, I just think it's a no-brainer. And to go buy a unit where you're gonna have, $8,000 in body corporates anyways, get this thing that's actually paying you some money, because not everybody's made the wise investments. Some of them, the house is all they've got. But then it also brings me back to the poor buggers that don't earn that magical $1,300 a week to get into your rooming house. Is that just social housing now? Like where do they go? If the tenancy board says you can only rent a house where it's 30% or 35% income or whatever it is, like, and you're the bottom of the market.
Yeah.
They're
How does everyone else get?
they're renting rooms.
Well, okay.
Those are the ones.
An example would be working with government on that solution. We are working with our partners at the moment in Gympie, where they're building a place there with cabins. The government, under Job Seeker, gives them $270 a week towards the rent. Then the Job Seeker payment that the client gets allows them to pay another $60 a week out of that money towards their rent. That puts them into a caravan with their own toilet and shower. That puts them looking over a golf course and the Mary River in this particular case. And if it floods, we've got space to pull them up to the higher ground. So that's an immediate solution using Job Seeker. But at the moment, if you looked at all the houses for rent in Australia under Job Seeker people that are on that payment from government, there are 2 houses available for them in the whole of Australia at the moment at that price that they can afford.
Wow.
2. Maybe 3, but that's it. That's the number. The last data I had was 2.
Wow.
So
great.
not a lot out there.
But there's a lot of shared housing, like we said, the slumlord style, where 4-bedroom, converted
Melbourne,
garages.
in Melbourne, they were renting tents on their balcony.
Yeah.
Things like that until the body corporate stopped them. It's frightening what people do. But again, you take 5 billion people in poverty, and they are the most resourceful people on the planet. They'll figure out how to eat. They'll figure out how to create shelter. Don't worry about it. But we are now officially a third world country because we're running at 3.2% growth. Can't do it.
Kevin, you have the way to solve, the housing crisis. You have a product. You're actually doing it. You're doing it in real life. You're not just talking about it.
Yeah.
You're actually doing it, and you're pushing shit uphill every time. And a lot of people will be listening to this going, God bless you. A lot of people will be going, oh, that's not the way it should be. We should all have our own property. I don't want to have to share rooms and with druggies and this person and that person. But the reality is, guys, it's not the people, it's not the stigma that you're thinking, right? It's not the propaganda. Like Kevin said, these are real people. These are nurses. These are teachers. They are dentists. They are firemen, fire people. And these are everyday people.
Yeah,
People that we need. When you go to the doctor,
Yeah.
right, and you're getting sorted out, those are the people that are renting these style of properties because they have no other choice. If you're single, you either, and you don't have anywhere else to go, you're either renting the tents or you're renting a caravan or, you're sharing rooms with other people, in a 3-bedroom unit and you're renting, sleeping on the couch and renting it 3 other rooms. That's the reality. All you got to do is walk the Esplanade, right? In Surfers, walk the Esplanade in Burley Heads. You've got $10 million units, and then beside you can see how many different people live in a unit. You can see how many different people are living in a house,
Yeah.
right? Like the slumlord style, because
yeah.
there's 5 cars in the driveway. There's no regulation. They're doing it under the radar, right? With what you're doing legally, you can't have that, right? And the people that are signing these leases understand that. And this is why infrastructure is the key moving forward as well, because you need people near public transport, because majority of these people don't own vehicles as well. So they're taking the bus, they're taking the trains, they're taking the trams. And in my opinion, this is the way things are going to be moving forward. That's
Yeah.
how it is in Europe, right? And there's a lot of people that it's going to be hard. It's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people to understand that this is the way that it is. And it is unfortunate. But if you didn't invest wisely back in the day, right? Like I'm doing everything now for my kids. Like I was literally in bed with them this morning, looking at them going, in my mind, everything I'm doing is for these 2 little humans right here. And a lot of people didn't take that position or were in a position to take that position. And it's someone like you, Kevin, right? And I know off camera, we've talked so much of the shit sandwiches that you've been eating over the years, fighting, right, with councils, fighting with governments, when you actually have the solution and you're doing it correctly, to the point now where there will be a point in time where banks will fund this. You will be able to go to a traditional bank, one of the big 4 banks, and you will get funded for this type of property, just like with modular housing, right? And Commonwealth Bank has just come out with a new product. My mate's been in modular housing for the last 7 years, right? All doing government work. And I remember sitting down with NAB Bank going, hey, would you guys fund this? No, we don't fund that. We don't fund that type of product, right? But it's changing, and it will change over time. But in my opinion, what you're doing is God's work in this country, because you're giving people an opportunity to get out of that rat race.
It's great when you do 40 years of working for developers and you realize your soul was traded for that. So when you get a move away from that, and I still do development work because it keeps my hand in, so I'm not against that. But what I'm saying is that the solution is I can take a rooming house today and sell it to 5 individual people, and they've got their own 30 square meter home that they own. I could take a caravan park site today and create the same as an over 50s resort, where I take one title and do a sublease on every single caravan park site. That person then owns that caravan park forever. They can't be kicked off there. They have the right to build a small bungalow on that same site as well as their caravan. They could then rent that caravan to someone else and create an income while they're living in a beautiful bungalow. Here's the rub. If you do that right, the quality of life those people have in that place is more community driven, because they can grow their own food, have parties with their own people. 50% of people who live on the Gold Coast don't even know their neighbour's name. They could be forgiven for being in the wrong house because it's exactly the same as the one next door. You know, like it's literally an excuse. I didn't realise that. So it's like we're creating common unity in the projects we do, community, where they could create their own food source and their own water, their own everything. It's not that hard, and it would be the best life they've ever had. It'll be the one they remember. This has been around since the Jews created the kibbutz, where you could go to the free love kibbutz, or the one who does cakes, or the one that does this. You picked the one you wanted to live in and went there.
I got a question. I know that you guys went. I wasn't available at that time, and we took a couple of our private coaching clients, and you guys did a bit of a tour. Is this something that we can do moving forward?
Yeah.
Like, can we? And I want to talk to the audience here, right? If you guys would be interested in doing a tour, right? Because talking about it is one thing, but seeing it and touching it and feeling it like you guys have seen is totally different,
Totally
right?
different.
I would love to know if that would be of any interest to anyone that's listening to this. And if it is, in the comments, just let us know, hey, yes, I'd be interested in going on a paid tour, right? So say if we rented a coach bus, right? And we put you guys in a bus with Kevin, with Shannon, with Carson, with myself, and say 40, 50 people, however many would fit in the bus, and go around to some of these developments that you've done and walk in them so you can actually see the size of the rooms, see the size of the kitchenette, see what you'd actually be investing in the opportunity. I think that would be great because I wasn't available that time, but it would be interesting to see if the listeners would like that as well. So if you guys would be interested in something like that, not saying that we're doing it or not doing it, this is just something off the cuff that I've just thought about. I think I just wrote it down here, properties here. It would be great, like for half a day or something like that.
I'd go beyond that. I would invite them to where we bought a Caravan, a 1981 Viscount. Now, we bought that for $20,000. I've just sold 2 Caravans to clients of ours that for $18,000 each. With government support, they rent those at $350 a week. Just so you know, as an investor, they get 100% return in their first year on that Caravan. They get 18 grand back for 18 grand in. That's how powerful the bottom end is of the market.
Again, like I didn't even know that. Like that's fresh
Well,
news.
we've just done 2 in the last 24 hours.
That's fresh news.
We've got
to me.
another 8 delivering next week at 18,000 each. The van I bought at 18,000 and renovated it to the ultimate Caravan that brings it up to today's standard for 40 grand. If I rented that on a 15% return, I only have to rent that for $97 a week to get a 15% return on my money. If someone wants to go out and do 10 Caravans, we'll do a guaranteed rent back for 4 years if you like, and pay the damn thing out at the end of 4 years and give you your money back. That's how big the market is. That's how huge it is. Because the problem is people want affordable housing so they can save for a house. How can you pay $800 to $1,000 a week as a first-home buyer and buy a block of land and settle it and wait 12 months to build a house when there's only 13,000 title blocks in the whole country with 70,000 people suddenly becoming a first-home buyer? Anyone with half a brain can figure out we don't have the land. It takes us 15 years to create it. This is getting dumb. Now, I can't beat them, so if I can just get the 3 layers of government to agree on one thing, temporary planning instrument change 527 times across the councils that want to play, and I might only get 100 of them playing. And it's one job, one thing. And if they don't like it, don't do it again.
Kevin, thank you so much. Guys, you've heard it from the man himself. You know, this guy is solving the housing crisis every day. And like I said before, if that kind of property tour does interest you, maybe we'll put something on in the future, but just put in the comments.
I'll do a 2-day gig for them.
Yeah.
A day of education and a day on the buses.
Yeah.
We'll call it Deals on Wheels.
Yeah, I think that would be
Okay.
great. I think that would be fun. If
We'll
you guys
commit.
want to know more about it, we'll commit to something. And if you want to know more about what Kevin is doing, what they're building, where they are building, how you can fund these things through some of his strategic alliances, go to www.unemployable.com.au/high yield property club. And either Kevin or one of his team will get back to you with the information. Kevin, Shannon, Carson, thank you very much for introducing us to Kevin. We've done a fair bit of work together over the last little while, and we'll continue to bring Kevin on. We're going to be doing a pod once a month with Kevin, kind of like our Friday pods. It's not going to be called a Friday pod, but it's going to be called probably somewhere along the lines of the property banter, monthly pod where we're just going to go on and, just banter about real estate and property and what's happening in the market from people that are actually in the market doing real things, not just someone that sits behind a camera and talks like what they, talks about something that they think they know. Actually, people in the trenches, dealing with councils, dealing with state governments, dealing with builders, dealing with developers. That's what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. And we just want to keep giving the most relevant information to you guys. So as always, please like, subscribe, share. The more that you guys hit that subscribe button, the better and better guests we can have on here. We appreciate you guys. Thanks for your attention, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you for watching that episode of Unemployable. It was an absolute pleasure having you along for the ride. If you'd like to watch another episode, simply click here, but make sure before you go, subscribe to the channel.